Yeah. So I like you buh, buh, buh. Why does that happen when you hit the all the years I've been behind the mic, the tongue still does its own
Pressure
thing.
on you.
Yeah, there's one thing. Yeah,
It's pressure on you.
I remember like practicing a poem for weeks and being fluid with it, and then when you get before the mic, it's like blah, 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 blah. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, those mixture of nerves and anticipation, man.
Yeah, apparently if you're not nervous, then you're not prepared to do it right.
And I also think like if you're not nervous, you're not psyched enough to be on point, you know. So the nerves just make you like balance that out. Otherwise, you can be complacent and just
so would you say that unlike the popular sentiment that nerves are the enemy, they're actually not?
Yeah, well, they can be. You need enough nerves, not too much, you know.
Enough.
Yeah. You need enough to keep you on track to execute and nail it. Yeah. But if it's too much, man, you're just gonna like get crushed under the weight of anticipation.
It's funny that we're talking about this. I've been thinking a lot about allowing yourself to make mistakes, you know, allowing yourself to stumble, allowing yourself to, you know, have that nervous hand jitter and whatever. But yeah, you know, I've wanted to do this for the longest time, interview you and basically have a conversation with you, because you're one interesting personality. I don't know if you recall you coming to Botswana for the temple opening, and you interviewed me for Back to Godhead magazine. I was so excited. Not that I was being interviewed for Back to Godhead magazine, but I was like, wow, here's an African-bodied person who's doing something. You know?
Okay, yeah.
I was really excited. I don't know if you saw that, but anyway, yeah. So here we are. I'm interviewing Mukhundangri Das for ISKCON News. If you could kindly just give a brief introduction of yourself, Prabhu.
Mukhundangri Das, disciple of His Holiness Jai Advaita Swami, journaler, writer, thinker. I love the philosophy of Krishna Consciousness. I love Bhagavatam, an avid reader, and I like thinking about what I read and applying what I read. By profession and qualification, I'm a civil engineer, doing some work in urban development, sustainability, energy. But at my core, I think I'd be best categorized as someone who loves to think deeply.
Deep thinker, that's good. That's nice. I saw how you actually now, like the set of questions I sent you, you're already thinking deeply about them. Which is something else.
Maybe it's my I sort of struggle with this boxing in of things, and then sometimes, you know, it's like, oh, we're gonna go down this line of questions and stuff like that. It's yes, it's the thinking deeply part, but there's always more to people than what meets the eye, you know, and it's nice to go through journeys of discovery with people, instead of sometimes what we tend to do as human beings is work on presuppositions, and we have a certain angle that we engage people with when, when we come with an open mind and an open heart, we are then taken on an adventure of discovering the other person.
Yeah, and speaking of going on a journey of discovery, could you tell me how you came across Krishna Consciousness?
My good friend, whom I'd known from high school. We went to different high schools. At the time, his name was Atla. And although we had different high schools, we had quite a bit of contact with each other, especially in our final year of high school. And considered him to be extremely funny, very intelligent too. And when we were on the same sort of scholarship scheme, if you were to put it like that, when we started our university tenure, and our friendship grew even closer. So when he got into the swing of things at university, he became very much involved with the Bhakti Yoga Society. And now, like I said, the thing about not boxing in people and working on presuppositions, I've always been like, I'm someone who's always just been fascinated with anything and everything spiritual and religious, because knowing deeper and higher truths about life is just who I've always been. And I got invited to the Bhakti Yoga Society, and one of my friends, who I was attending a lecture with just before I went to the Bhakti Yoga session. It's actually like devoutly Christian. I didn't suss it out as much back then. But when we went to the BYS session and we started talking about meditation and had 10 minutes of doing japa, my friend got very uncomfortable. Like, no, how, it doesn't feel right to me. And so my sense of justice and not presupposing anything kicked in, and I was like, this is these people's culture and practice, and ultimately, there are certain truths that are universal, and one of those is that we're all trying to connect to a higher source, and this is just one modality, one method, one practice that connects this particular culture and group of people like that. And I'm like, so in my rebelliousness against my friend and having that sense of justice, I was like, I'm staying here and I'm gonna meditate. And so I stayed the entire session. I ended up like getting some beads, Bhagavad Gita, if I'm not mistaken, a chant and be happy, a pack of incense. And I was not interested in reading Bhagavad Gita, not at all. But I understood it was an important spiritual text to these new group of people that I've just met. And so I had a bookshelf, like everywhere. I had my bookshelf, quite an extensive bookshelf at the time. How old was I? 18, 19, somewhere there. But because this was a sacred text to these group of people, by nature and who I am, by always having that reverence for everything religious and spiritual, I didn't decide to shove it in with my social sciences book, philosophy of justice, and other autobiographies. I actually put it facing front on my bookshelf, you know. Saw the cover there was this man sitting on this chariot, and this other man with a bluish complexion. Is just like, respect, do my thing, you know. But anyway, a few weeks later, I was on campus and I was just finishing up. I just come out of my last lecture and my mom calls me. Now, my mom was someone who was very, this idea of being a thoughtful person really came from her. She'd always tell me, think about what you do, how you do it. And so even though we were raised in a Christian household, we were always encouraged to have a certain independence of thought, and carry ourselves through the world with a certain level of scrutiny that allows us to understand the world around us a little bit more intimately. So in that sense, it was a very open household when it came to different philosophical and religious thought. So raised Christian, but very open to the thoughts of other cultures and religion. And so, I don't know, my mom must have seen the Bhagavad Gita sitting there on my bookshelf, and she picked it up and she read it. So she calls me coming out of this lecture, you know. It's like, when are you coming home? You coming home now? Okay, when you get home, like, just hurry up and get home. So I'm like, what's wrong? It's like, no, just get home. And I get home and I'm like, is everything okay? She calls me to the living room and she picks up this Bhagavad Gita, and I'm like, my immediate response is like, what are you doing with my book? A book I didn't want to read. But then she says to me, this old man, pointing to the picture of Prabhupada on the back, this old man has given me the answers to the questions that I've always had in my life. And just so you understand, my mother was a ferocious reader, like consume 300-page books over a weekend type of reader, you know. And that afternoon, I think she'd finished like the introduction to Bhagavad Gita and started a bit of chapter 1 or something like that, and was verging into the second chapter. And so she was just taken aback by what was in this book. So in any case, I think a few weeks after that initial that event, my mom fell sick, and a month later she passed away. But one of our last meaningful conversations was, and her instructions to me was, if you do anything, read these books. And that sort of started that relationship with Prabhupada's books in that respect, and also gave some sort of personal impetus to really take this journey seriously at that point in time. So yeah, through a friend, through the Bhakti Yoga Society, and in no small measure through the spiritual inspiration of my mother, who's I very much hold in the stead of a teacher. in my life. That's how all of this started.
That's a powerfully emotional story and gripping and very relatable in my situation. I don't know if you can see this person here. Wait, this side. That's my mom there.
Oh, lovely. Yeah.
Yeah, so she's running away from what do you call these huge things. Oh, I don't know if you can get that into focus. Oh, there we go. So my mom worked for
I see that.
Yeah. So she worked for she was a public relations officer and communications officer for Depswana.
And that's my mom's. You know,
show and tell is my mom. I'll definitely put that on a t-shirt, you know. Yeah, so anyway, she was running from that thing. She was doing a story on a new excavator. It looks like so tiny when you're at the lip of the pit, but then when you get down there, you know. And why she's running is they were going to start it to demo it. And what happened to her husband is he was squashed by such a thing.
Really? Sure.
Yeah. So when they brought her down there, they had to wrestle her to take her down there. So that when this guy started it up, it was like,
I can imagine.
Yeah. Anyway, so she had a similar reaction to Srila Prabhupada's books, you know, and when she saw Krishna, because she was a deeply spiritual person as well. Used to have trances, actually, and I never knew what to do when she'd get into one of those. She's like, I've seen this person. I'm like, what? I've met this person. So yeah, mothers are the first teacher, actually, the first guru.
No,
So,
100%. Yeah.
So now moving on, then you start reading Srila Prabhupada's books, and you start understanding what Krishna Consciousness is, and what happens after that.
Well, so that's obviously a milestone, like getting into the reading. So I was reading, but not necessarily taken by the chanting. I tried to chant, but not really. At that time, and you can imagine, like at the age of 19, 20, losing a mother, and your state of mind at that point in time is just, what is life, and what's the meaning to all of this, you know? And so my response, I think, a very instinctive response to everything, was to try and find the answers to the questions I now had. So there was that real deep dive into Prabhupada's books, and along this journey, I met a Swami. I knew in the process you needed to find a teacher, you know, and I could say I was searching for someone to guide me, to teach me, but at the same time not not overtly doing that, if that makes any sense. It was just a conscious thought that was in my mind. Then I met the Swami at a university program at Wits University, and he was just absolute fire, you know. He was just like answering questions and breaking things down in a way that I'd never seen before, and or heard before, and that was really, really exciting. And I remember during that like group session, I asked him a question myself. Now this is an audience of about like 100 odd students, and I asked him. I was just so enamored by him, taken aback by him. It's like, so what does it feel to be what does it feel like to be enlightened? And he replied to me that, well, why don't you become enlightened and you can tell me? So that was an answer that really, the wit really impressed me. He had a good sense of humor besides his actual spiritual depth. In any case, I sought to find out, I don't know why I was compelled to do this. I sought to find out when his birthday was. And I sent him an email on his birthday. So, yeah, hey, we met this time and I just wanted to wish you a happy birthday. And he wrote me back. We then had another face-to-face interaction at my first Chariot Festival, in fact, in 2010 in Durban, where I felt so comfortable with putting forward the question to him, to ask him to be my teacher, my guide. And it was quite a funny response. At the time, His Holiness Bibi Govindaswamy was walking behind me as I asked my future teacher the question, can you accept me as a disciple, as your student? And he said, well, I don't really take students, but there's so many other spiritual masters that you could turn to. And then he pointed to Bibi Govindaswamy, who was walking behind me. So I looked back and I turned around. And then I said, no, but I feel connected to you. And in any case, we had a real personal exchange. And in that exchange, I told him about, my background and all of that. And obviously what had just recently happened with my mother passing away. And that instruction that she gave, to read Prabhupada's books. And then he said to me, do you want to save your family? And I said, yeah, of course. And then he said, you know what the best way is to do that? And I said, I'm not sure. And he said, become a devotee of Krishna. And from that day forth, I started chanting. So I always say that my spiritual master has been the impetus as to why I began to take the process seriously. Is someone who's taken me really under his wing, has been a constant source of shelter and guidance and straightforwardness, which I love, protection, which I'm so grateful for. So that is what I'd say was the next milestone in that moment where we connected like that, and yeah, there was never anyone else for me to sort of like guide me and protect me the way I felt about my spiritual master, His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami.
So 2010, that's the Big Bang moment.
Yeah, that was the drop that sort of like burst the banks.
And actually, speaking about 2010, that's roughly around the same time that most of the young minds from WITS, and I'd say clever, intellectual, well-spoken, African-bodied individuals came into the scene, and in doing so, took the whole South African yatra by storm. I remember it was on the lips of everybody, like, who are these young people? They're very active, they're very engaged, they're very, very, very passionate. Could you tell me a little bit more about now coming into service, formal service?
Yeah, man.
In the ISKCON body?
Yeah. That BOIS crew. Firstly, I think there's something to be said about like you know, the BOIS program in general and the many gems it's generated throughout the decades of its existence, you know. So it was, I wouldn't necessarily say that the group I was in is particularly different or special in whatever way. But for me and my experience through it, it was so exciting, man. It was so exciting. So Atla at the time, who's now Agari Krishna Das, disciple of Devamrita Swami, Atla, Buntle, and myself virtually started at the same time, you know. And yeah, they're like my brother and my sister. And we've been through everything together throughout this journey of Krishna consciousness in terms of growth and milestones. So that was such an exciting period of my life in general, let alone just my Krishna conscious experience. And I'll tell you, like, I didn't even know that the institution ISKCON existed in my first year or 18 months of my just being involved with the Bhakti Yoga Society. I knew about Prabhupada, I knew about chanting Hare Krishna, I knew about, you know, prasadam, about like book distribution, about Bhagavad Gita and all of these, but like I'd never set foot in a temple before. So it's towards the latter end of my BYS career where I started getting more involved with the institution, still very much from the platform of BYS, so like with youth and stuff like that. But yeah, that was how I waded into the great institution, and now post-graduation from university, taking up services within Prabhupada's ISKCON.
The reason why I find that quite significant, looking at the history of BOIS WITS and how it came to be what it was when you guys emerged, it was like really struggling, right? I remember the time I was in Indonesia, and at the time Ishwara Puri, before he'd taken initiation, he was like, the temple is actually doing more damage than it is any good. So he was like, I'm gonna close the curtains and I'm gonna try this. If I fail, then Indonesia can take it back. It was, I think, similar or roughly at the same time as when KBYG was like, we're going off to Randburg, we're going to do our own thing. The temple is kind of like, throttling or suffocating us as young people. And they did some pretty amazing work too. So when that explosion happened, when all these young African personalities came through and they looked like they had their heads about their shoulders, and they knew where they were going, they knew what they wanted, they understood the philosophy, and they were taking up responsibility. That's actually something that I wanted to talk to you about in particular. The importance of taking up responsibility in the institution as an African-bodied person in post-apartheid South Africa and post-apartheid ISKCON South Africa. So, looking at your bio, you sent me like pretty short, concise. You didn't go into depth. I had to let me go onto his Facebook page. Let me look into this. Let me find this.
And you still found nothing.
I still found nothing. Just a bit of whatever I could glean from wherever. So I wanted to go into that. Who is Mukhundangri, and what does it mean to take up responsibility as an African-bodied person in what, in my experience, is a very difficult place to navigate as a person of African descent, where it shouldn't be, where I feel and find it shouldn't be that difficult. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, your question is layered in so many ways, First of all, I'll say that